Hello, my name is Precious Vicente. I am from the Gila River Indian Community from the village of Blackwater. I am a park ranger at Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. I work in interpretation, so I work a lot with the general public. I do education programs, I work doing tours. Along with being an education coordinator, I'm also the tribal liaison for the park. So that can go into a lot of different paths. I work with 6 tribes that have association to this site. That is Gila River, Thanatam, Salt River, Akchin, Hopi, and also Zuni Pueblo. So I have worked at Casa Grande Ruins since 2020, 2021. I was actually here on an internship with American Conservation Experience. They were looking for 2 indigenous participants to do historic preservation here. Continued on into a second internship, which dealt more with education, so interpretation. So I moved out of the resources management department into education. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed working with the public and getting, opportunities to participate in videos like this, working with the general public, and that's what I really find passion in. Very grateful for the experiences that I get to do working here, getting a lot of different trainings, a lot of things that I'm interested in, and most importantly, working with cultural sites that our ancestors, have walked for many, many generations. It's very humbling. So Casa Grande Ruins National Monument, we were the nation's first cultural preserve in the country. So we were one of the first national monuments here for the National Park Service. How Casa Grande got its name was in the late 16th century when the Spanish missionaries were coming through this area, specifically Father Kino. He came across this house, he seen it, and thought it was very large, called it Casa Grande, the Spanish term. It would be really great if we got the general public and also our own community members to say its O'odham name, which is Sivan. The river was still flowing. This place was filled with so much water and agriculture that it didn't look like a desert, but it looked like a forest. So if you look out into the distance, you can see some dead branches. Those are actually red velvet mesquite trees. And mesquite trees are an important part of our life as O'odham because we can use the wood for fire, we can consume the mesquite beans, we can use the pods. Mesquite was always an available resource for the O'odham to use in their daily lives. So we have now stepped onto Compound A. This is only one of 7 residential compounds that we have here on site. But of course this one is more magnificent with Sivan right behind me. We are not too completely sure on what a lot of these rooms were used for, and that's okay. That leaves a lot of room for us to interpret to the general public, so nothing's set in stone. But what I can tell you is what was found during excavation. In some of these rooms, they found an abundance of pots. These pots were very burnt and black at the bottom. That tells us that they were placed over a fire, most likely used for cooking. In other rooms, they found other items like quartz crystals, arrows with red paint on them. Might have been used for some ceremonial purpose. But this room right behind me, we call this the fonts room. You can see that there are holes in the western wall here. And what those are, we call those viga sockets. And viga sockets, that's where the holes and the floors used to be at. So at one point, this used to be a 2-story structure. Over time, it started to disintegrate and started to kind of fall apart, but this is the remains of it now. And what we do today as the National Park Service is we do our best to try and preserve these walls as much as possible. Preservation methods have been done since the 1930s. So in some of these walls, you'll actually see historic chicken wire and rusted nails from earlier preservation attempts. We don't use any of that now because in later years, we find that is really destructive to the walls, and so we don't want to do any more of that. But we do have crews that come out here. A lot of these are the Thanatam conservation crews. They come out here and they coat these walls in a sacrificial mud layer. And so from that, on days like this, you can see that it's cloudy, so that on days that it rains, we hope that it washes away the mud mixture rather than the original fabric that's on the inside of the walls. This roof structure was built in 1932. This was built by Olmsted II. He constructed a lot of different architectures throughout the country. He even was an architect for Grand Central Park in New York. When rain falls down, there's gutters. It falls down the legs of the pipe into the roof structure, and then it disperses to other places in the park that need water. So we believe this house to have been built in 1350 CE. That's almost 700 years ago, 4 stories tall, and it has 11 rooms inside of it. You can see that there's this very large south end room. There's also one on the north side. You can see at the base is concrete. This originally didn't used to be here. This used to be one entryway inside, and you can see on the floor there's a black substance. That's actually asphalt. In the time of the 1930s, when asphalt was just being introduced, the Park Service at the time thought, well, if we coated this whole monument in asphalt, it'll help preserve it. Luckily, they only stayed to the floors, and you can see it didn't really hold so well up over time. You can see the metal beams that support the stabilization of the house. Those were placed in 1891. The reason we need those now is because you can see where the white sandbags are, where the viga sockets are. That's where the floors and the ceilings used to be. Pre-excavation, when the people were still residing here, there used to be 600 to 700 ponderosa pines that made up the floors and the ceilings. And you have to think back then when there wasn't horses, cattle, wheels, wagons. Ponderosa pine only comes from Tucson. So thinking about the geographic location that we are now and thinking about how far Tucson is from us, you can only imagine back then without having any livestock to help pull these ponderosa pines, that must have been a lot of work to carry 600 to 700 beams. Over time, when the people dispersed from this area, they most likely took all of those logs with them because that was a lot of work to obtain those. So they didn't want those to go to waste, so they most likely made new homes and structures out of them. So you can see on the inside walls, we have graffiti. The Park Service wasn't always here to help preserve and protect this place, so at one point there used to be an old stagecoach route that used to run by. It was a touristy spot even in the 1800s. People would stop by here and put their names into the walls. Our earliest graffiti inscription dates back to 1871. So we do try and keep track of all the graffiti markings as much as possible. We actually have a big book that we have in our visitor center, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of names of the people who have came and put their name in the house. But we don't just have historic graffiti here, we actually have prehistoric inscriptions. We have 3 of them that are located on the very inside of the house, but luckily over time, those 3 did not get touched. So I know I talked a lot about the concrete, the asphalt, but what Sivan is originally composed of is it's made of a material called caliche. Caliche is a calcium carbonate. It binds together gravel, sand, silt, clay, and when it dries and hardens, it's actually stronger than concrete. So this stuff is really impenetrable. The site where it was allocated from is actually here within the park. It dried up now with the loss of the Gila River and the underground water table depleting. So it doesn't produce anymore. But the people, when they were here, they would have gathered the caliche, brought it here, and formed all of the walls up by hand. So they built up a few feet, let it dry, built up a few feet again, let it dry, and kept building it in layers. In some parts of the day, you can actually see the fingerprint strokes from the people's hands when they were forming up the walls. So this stuff is not only impenetrable, but it's also very a good insulator. On days that it is 120 outside, you can go in here and it'll bring the temperature down by 10 to 15 degrees. This is not the original height of the door, where if you look at this one right here, this is more true to the size and the height that the doors would have been. But a long time ago, they would have gotten room to room using ladders. This could have been done to prevent flooding, to prevent rodents and pests from getting inside of the house. So right now we are inside of the house, and what we're looking at right now is you can really see the viga sockets where the ponderosa pines would have laid. They also laid saguaro rib, vapai. As we know, saguaros are a big part of our life because they provide food to eat, but they also are significantly important because they built our homes for us. We use their ribs for all different types of things. And so from that, we should always respect them and, never cause any harm to them because they really give a lot to us. So pre-excavation, this room, the basement, was fully covered in sand. You can see that it was filled up. You can kind of see the indentation from where it was filled to, right up to this ventilation hole. And then once it was fully excavated, they left it uncovered. So this room is a floor lower than the rest of the house. So right here we have some red brick. A lot of people misinterpret that this was something that the Hugum created. This isn't. This is more of a modern preservation method today. Before there was a roof structure, when it would rain would actually fall down, and because the ground that we're standing on is so flat, water would puddle up at the base of the house, and it was softening the caliche, affecting the stabilization of it. So to prevent that, red brick was put in all throughout the base of the house. So that's why this texture right here looks a lot different than this one up top. This up top is the original fabric that was placed. So this right here is the southwest building, the very far corner of the compound itself. This is one of 3 multi-structural buildings that we have here on site. This one here was actually about 3 stories tall. There was an earthquake that happened some years ago, and we felt the repercussions of it all the way down here, and it actually caused a large portion of this building to fall over. The compound itself, these rooms actually would have been about 5 to 6 feet tall, and the outer boundary wall would have been about 7 to 8 feet tall. Kind of like how we have fencing in our own homes to keep kids in, to keep intruders out. I think of it as the same concept. And in general, it was predicted at the time in 1350 that about 2,000 people were living here in Compound A at the time. So I just want to thank everyone for following along and watching this and getting to tour Sivan with me. This really does mean a lot, not only to me, but also to our people and to our culture and to our history. Because you look at this house, you look at the compound surrounding it, you look at the ground. Like I said before, when you go to the backcountry and you see the pottery sherds and you can see all the intricate designs that they were completing, they really all do have stories to tell. When we do have events, I do encourage tribal members to come out here and participate with us because, again, this place is still very much alive, and it needs its people to come back here and to just be here with the people, again, that walked in these footsteps a long time ago. There is a lot of resiliency that came from our people, not only from the time of the Hugum, but also throughout modern history. We have faced a lot of unfortunate circumstances when it comes to the loss of the Gila River, when it comes to health discrepancies. We have to look back and really remember what our ancestors did. They were master farmers, irrigators, architects, and we really can learn a lot from them in the lifestyle that they have always lived.